saw somebody here a second.
We have an adjunct sheriff.
I'll sit here and that looked like a pretty sheriff.
There's Dave.
There you go, there you go.
It's ready.
Mic's on?
Good.
Yep. We want to welcome everybody to our commission meeting today. If you'd join us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item of business tonight is the presentation of the Carbon County Employee of the Month, and we'll turn the time over to Rose.
Commissioners, our Employee of the Month, and I'm going to let Frank talk about him, is Ron Lingle. He's the part-time employee. He's a very hard, dedicated worker, and because of that, he's part-time. He's at his other job.
Right.
So he's running a little late. But we're going to just go ahead and let Frank talk about him, and if he comes in, we'll introduce him briefly.
So Ron is one of our roster people. We survive on a lot of roster people that work as needed on an as needed basis, and because of that, they usually work other full-time jobs during the day. Ron comes in at night, weekends, early mornings. Basically, if he's available and we need him, he comes in and helps us out with various duties at the fairgrounds. And we had, the reason that Ron has been nominated, one of the many reasons, is we had a wedding in June. And both the parents of the bride and the groom called the following Monday following the wedding and expressed to me what a great job Ron did with, taking care of the family and taking care of the group. And they wanted him to be recognized somehow. And I felt that this was just as good an opportunity as any, because we have a number of full-time employees, but we survive on our part-time help, our college kids, our roster guys like Ron, and also some of the high school kids. So Ron Lingle is our Employee of the Month this month.
Thank you for presenting him. And where we have missed him tonight, will you be sure to let him know our appreciation?
I will. Ron's a coal miner, so he works. He's actually working at the new coal mine that they've reopened in
Bronco
Emory.
mine.
Bronco.
Yeah, and he loads the coal onto the trucks, and they're working double shifts this week, so just wasn't able to make it, but wanted to thank the commission for the opportunity to have a job, and he's always very grateful. Always thanks me for the work that he's given the opportunity to do. So, good man.
Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. And thank you, Frank, for presenting him.
Thank you.
Our next item is to open sealed bids for the Wada substation. Seth?
As commissioners, we have two sealed bids. The first is from ECI Electrical Contractors. And it is for $79,900. The next bid is from Bodek Electrical. And Bodek's bid is for $85,559.97.
Okay. Thank you, Seth. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to accept the bids and return to, I'm guessing it's Barry that needs to review these. Do you have anybody else that you're reviewing them with? To Barry and Curtis for review and award.
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. If you'll review those and then get back with us then. Thanks. Next item, go ahead.
I guess it would be appropriate to acknowledge ECI as the low bidder.
Okay, well, any problem acknowledging that? So we'll add that to that motion. Our next item is the approval of minutes, and commissioners, we have 2 sets. Let's go ahead and take the June 21st of 2017 first. Are there any changes or?
This was a large set of minutes, though in my review, perhaps it was somewhat brief, but I didn't find any changes. Did you, commissioners?
No.
I made a few grammatical and spelling corrections, but nothing substantive. And I've given those to Lori already.
She'd indicated that. So.
Okay.
So beyond those, I'd go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our next set of minutes then was from July 19th, 2017. Any changes or corrections at this point?
I did not. I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. Our next item, it sounds like we need to table. It was consideration and possible approval of a memorandum of understanding with Prywide for the use of the Farnham Rock Pit for the Wellington Prywide EWP project. And we moved that last time, and it sounds like they haven't been able to review and get everything put together, so we don't have that one to take a look at, commissioners. So if we could have a motion to table that, and do you think we can put that on to the next?
I think so. I have prepared the agreement and forwarded it on, so we just need to, it's just a matter of what Prywide's timeline would be, but I would bet we'd get it. I'm almost certain we'll get their review back by next meeting.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to table until their review is completed, presuming that it is our next commission meeting, and if not, then when it is completed.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our next item is review and possible approval of a cathodic protection rectifier and anode bed easement with Prywide. Jeff, do you want to speak to that?
The main transmission line for water through the valley is steel. And with the soils we have in Carbon County, steel is corroded quite readily when it's in the ground, especially in the lower end of the valley. And we have 5 or 6 what they call sacrificial anode beds. If you remember back from your high school chemistry days, you had alkaline soils or alkaline on the pH scale, you had acidic. Well, around here we have a lot of alkaline. We have alkaline soils. This is called an anode bed because it's a negatively charged sacrificial anode bed. So what will happen is these will deteriorate over time. In the Westwood area, we had a bed that was a horizontal bed. It was just north of the current location of Beehive Homes. Along the fence line. Well, with the development of the properties in there and whatnot, and the age, we need to move it. But we don't want to move it too far. So just across the street, a little bit to the north, the county has a triangle piece of property that is truly not very usable. And you have a retention basin there. Just to the north of that, there's an even smaller piece of triangle property that's really not of much use. And that's where that's located in that. And we would like to be able to put a vertical anode bed in there, right there. The advantage to the vertical is while there will be a little more space needed during construction and installation, once it's in place, it will be a 6-foot square with a little piece of equipment sticking out of the ground. You won't hardly notice it. And it'll be there for another 25, 30 years, protecting the water system.
Any questions, Commissioner? I know that
I've reviewed
Christian
it.
has reviewed it.
I see no problem. Doesn't require anything of the county other than to let it be there. And
We will ask to be able to put one of our locks on your gate that's right there. You have a gate that enables your crews to go in and maintain that retention basin. We would like to put our lock through that same device so that we can get in and maintain that as we need to. But there's very little actual going in to maintain things. Most of it's done on a rectifier.
What's your time frame for getting this?
First of the year. We're budgeting the construction of it for our calendar. Our budget year starts in the calendar year, and so we will do it probably sometime in the spring. So we'll start it.
Very good.
Further
I'll make
questions?
a motion to approve an easement with Prywide.
And second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next item is a review and possible approval of a county credit card for our new agricultural agent, Stephen Price. Seth?
As counties accustomed to do, anytime we have a new supervisor and they need access to a county credit card, that's brought to the commission for formal approval. Stephen Price is the new ag agent. He's replaced Ron Patterson, and in that we'd like to approve a card. I believe the old credit limit was for $3,000. So,
Do you know, Seth, and this is beside the topic, when his first day is or will be?
he's already started.
He's just recently started?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
A second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Our next item is a review and possible approval of contract with the State of Utah Division of Natural Resources to provide funds for dredging the Price River.
I can address this one. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to do this. When we had problems with the flooding, these are funds that were set aside legislatively by Senator Hinkins worked to get these funds set aside for dredging, and worked on out at the thing. If you see in your packets, there's a bunch of pictures of flooding out by the different fairways and at the golf course and that diversion dam. A lot of this work has already happened, and this is so that the mechanism that the legislature is trying to provide funding to help relieve some of the work that's done. We're ready to already submit for reimbursement on some of these funds. They wanted an agreement placed in first, and it took some time with the state because they were trying to decide which state agency they were going to pass the funds down through. That's been determined, and that's the agreement that you have before you today.
Looks like the amount is for $20,000 towards the completion and expiration date of June 30th of 2018.
In my review of the contract, I didn't find anything concerning. Christian, did you have any?
No, it's fine to me.
Okay. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Our next item is a review and possible approval of a resolution to withdraw from the Southeastern Utah District Health Department. And commissioners, we probably each have some things that we want to do in this discussion. Let me maybe start and then we can take turns, but the reason that we're considering this is that by state law we have to provide a 90-day notice of withdrawal from a health district, and that would be the 1st of October. So we felt that it was important to get a resolution in place in case that is the direction that we do need to go. So I know that this withdrawal is being considered and viewed by many as an issue over a hiring practice and when a new director was being hired, but that is really only part of the problem, and my address will go into some more of that information. So Commissioner Meller, you do serve on that board. If you'd like to take a minute, we'll go ahead and turn it time to you, and then Commissioner Hopes, or else I'll go after that.
Very good. Appreciate the time, Commission Chair. The Southeast Utah Board of Health, the board is made up of 3 individuals chosen from each county, with 1 commissioner or council person represented, as well as 2 individuals at large. And there are some other stipulations as to how those individuals are chosen. Currently, the past year or so, it has been very difficult to focus on public health as a board, as we have had issues in regards to organization and other distractions, as I would call them. Not acting in the function that we should, not moving on decisions based on board decisions, but individuals moving upon their own self-appointed direction, so to speak. And there's just a lot of concerns on how we should properly function. And recently we have brought in legal counsel. Being the home county to the health department, we have brought in Christian Briner, and he's been able to set us on a straighter path on a number of different issues. However, it has been very difficult to function as an organization when we've kind of been floundering in a rather interesting direction of recent. And some of it has to do with personality. A lot of it actually has to do with personality from various board members, but it's also something that perhaps just needs a clean slate. And so that's one of the reasons why it's here before us today. And I'd like to provide more comments, but maybe in response to some of your guys' suggestions and comments.
Commissioner Holmes, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point?
I'll yield the floor.
Okay. Let me take a few minutes then and go through the items that I have been working on in regards to this. Is the first thing that I believe very much is that Grand County has a real prejudice towards Carbon County. In public meetings and also in other places, they have stated that they do not like the idea of Carbon County hosting the health district, nor do they like the idea that the director lives here. I have found that a lot of times that in making that particular statement, that if we don't see eye to eye with them, then we are subordinate to them and we are lesser in many ways. And I don't feel that that's a healthy relationship to have with a neighboring county. Many times I find myself and others that they are at odds with the Grand County. Also, on more than one occasion, and in, again, public meetings and in other settings, I've been told by representatives of Grand County that when San Juan decided to leave the health district, that they seriously considered leaving themselves. So that tells me also that it's either a dissatisfaction or that the difference is really in how we perceive public health between the counties and what is really important. Also, they have stated publicly in the process of hiring a director that they are determined to have new blood in leadership in the district. And I would ask this question, is this not a bias and a discriminatory action towards any candidate that would apply from the three-county area? The other thing that plays into this very much so is that in regards to the population of the three counties, Carbon County represents 50% of the population. Emery County represents over 25% of that population, and Grand County then has approximately a 22 or 23% population base. So this is where it's been established. This is where the health district has been operating for all the years. And talking with Dr. Miner when these were set up, it's been over 40 years when the rural health districts were set up. And so I see that, you know, because of those issues and those opinions that seem to come out through board members in particular, because that's who we're dealing with, that I find it very difficult to continue to deal with and let just one county take that stance in regards to what is best for the citizens of Carbon County. I found in the limited interaction that I've had with the board and in attending several meetings that there is a very big division. They are dysfunctional. They don't seem to be able to work in regards to committees. And I think that's because there's a distrust among many of those members. And so if a committee is formed and wants to put forth an opinion or a recommendation, the rest of the board wants to have their say in that committee. That's not how committees work. And this is a committee, a board of 9 people. The director has, not the director, but the chair of the board has the ability to appoint committees, and they are temporarily, but to also, you know, take into consideration those items that they bring forward. So I don't see that that is working very well. I also see that they are trying to micromanage the health department district, and I'll read some statute and some information too. The reason I've put that out is that really, are we not hiring a director and staff, other staff in a health department to manage and make sure that what is going on day to day is taken care of. Now, if the board has a concern, there is a mechanism in law to take care of that. But again, it comes as a board, it comes to a director, and it can go from there if need be. So I see that as another concern that I have. I also see that there's an inability to let a director lead. You know, they want to, again, be in the micromanagement side of it. I think that the board has forgotten that they are an advisory and a policy setting board as it pertains to public health. Going back to the hiring process, it failed. And it failed because that process was not put into place before they started. Job descriptions needed to be reviewed, expectations needed to be put in place. They also needed to have a salary range that would be offered. And those things were not, because that's where a solid base starts and not in place, then many of the things changed as this process went forward. And it looks to me like when it came right down to it, and the final hiring committee was formed, it was formed of those nine board members, each who were, my understanding is, able to ask a question, and then they were scored based upon the questions. And it seems that there was very little conversation about merits and so forth of each candidate, and yet we totally picked people by how those interview questions were scored. And in the boards that I have sat on and in the hiring committees that I have been part of, I do not find that that is the normal process that we go through as a government agency. In several of them, in the second meeting that I attended, I made several suggestions that were not part of the minutes as far as frequency of meeting. These are bylaw issues, where they meet, and that if the process, which was voted unanimously to go forward and the rehiring process, if it was to go forward, it needed to be by an entirely different group of individuals to do the interviewing and making the recommendation to the board. Those things were left out of that meeting that was reported on. The other thing that I would like to share are some of the information from Utah Code. So this is Utah Code annotated 26A-1-109 pertaining to these issues that I've already voiced. The board shall determine the general public health policies to be followed in administration of the local health department and may adopt and enforce public health rules, regulations, and standards necessary to implement the board's public health policies. The board should adopt written procedures to carry out the provisions of this section. That is, by law, by statute, what this board is tasked with doing. And so why that is a very broad statement, we have gone beyond what is required by law. In the rule number 380-40, which is the local health department minimum performance standards, it states, this is number 7, that the local health officer shall ensure that fiscal management procedures are developed, implemented, and maintained in accordance with federal, state, and local government requirements. So again, if there's issues in that regard, the mechanism is already built into the state code and the rules that should be followed. Number 8 is consistent with federal and state law and local ordinances and policies. The local health officer shall ensure that employees are recruited, hired, terminated, classified, trained, and compensated in accordance with relevant merit principles, federal civil rights requirements, and laws of general applicability, and that their requirements are consummate with job responsibilities. And then there is a whole list of things under that particular section in regards to what a director should do versus what a board should do. In the bylaws of the Utah, or of the Southeastern Utah Health District, these are the things that, again, that I see are at issue. And so number 5 is that the board shall determine the general policy to be followed in administration of the Southeastern Health Department. The board shall adopt and carry out the provisions of this article. And again, that ties directly back to that annotated code. Number 6, again, defining the rule or what the board should be doing. The board may adopt rules, regulations, and standards not in conflict with the rules of the state health department. Number 14, the board should support the professional staff in implementing efficient and effective effective and efficient service delivery systems by providing sufficient resources, developing policies, initiating legal and legislative action, and informing the public and attending meetings. In section number 5 under meetings, the Board of Health meetings should be held every other month on the fourth Tuesday. I had suggested that perhaps while the many issues that are going on in the board, that perhaps that should be changed to be monthly, which could be done by a motion of that board, and that it has to have at least 3 days notice prior to doing so as far as special meetings or changes. Number 3, and this one I found very interesting, board members should submit agenda items to the director 10 days prior to the regularly scheduled meeting. I don't believe that that is being followed in the bylaws. If so, we would be talking more about public health and less about micromanaging administrative, even though those fiduciary responsibilities are there. But there is a great need for that director to be able to answer those and to be able to take care of that. Now, I know we're acting under an interim director, but in the limited research I've been able to do, I don't know that that does away with that right and that responsibility to act in these same things. Under number 7, under committees, and I've already talked about that, so I won't go into that, but that is that the ad hoc committees can be formed by the board, and that the chairperson can also empower and give special and appoint special committee members. So those are the issues that I personally have as a commissioner from Carbon County, in that it is time to make some changes and time to go forward with a more healthy process for the citizens of our county. And I'll stop there for a minute and turn time to either of you commissioners for your input, and then I do have some possible outcomes that I would add.
Well, I'll just reiterate a lot of the same points that you made. Being a board member myself for the past little while, sitting on there specifically this past year, whether it be a budget committee, a hiring committee, a board review committee, or various other ad hoc committees that we've had as a board, they have not necessarily functioned according to how you've described by state statute and by our Board of Health bylaws. And for a lot of the, basically all the reasons you mentioned, we're here today to make a decision specific to Carbon County's responsibility of the $126,000 that we fund the health department with every year. That money we are stewards over to make sure that the citizens of Carbon County receive the best benefit they possibly can. And so that that money can properly be used and most effectively be used, we need to address the concern of the board and whether or not it is functioning, whether or not we have a working relationship that can be salvaged or saved with Grand County, or whether we leave the health district altogether and perhaps form something separate with Emery County.
Thank you. Commissioner Hopes.
I just want to point out that I think it would be altogether better if we were able to work out our differences with the 3 counties. However, if we can't get past some of the hard feelings and the prejudices that are happening, maybe it is better that we split ways. I think that's the reason why we're going down this road with this resolution, just to put it out there that if we can't get past these and potentially go through a cleaner hiring process for a health officer, then potentially it's time to split ways and form a new health district.
Thank you, Commissioners. So the things that I have come up with is I have, again, studied and talked with other individuals involved in the health department, particularly with Dr. Miner, who is the state director of public health. And of course, his encouragement is the same as what Commissioner Hopes has stated, that we try and work things out and have the 3 counties remain as they were formed long ago. But these are some of the things I see, and I don't have all the answers yet as far as how it could happen, but one of the possibilities in keeping it together could be appointing new board members from each county. I don't know the function. I have asked Dr. Miner to provide us with information on how that could happen as a possibility. And then after that was reformulated, I would personally ask them to relook at our bylaws, our operating standards, and then to form a hiring committee to go forward on how that would be, knowing that you can have an interim director for up to a year period of time. Now, I don't want this to be drug out for months, days, years, and weeks, but I do see that there is no way to proceed in the hiring process and in addressing these others without some type of major change. And I don't have the formula for what that would look like. Because I really believe that through the process, as Commissioner Miller has stated over the past few months, there's been a lot of disharmony and a lot of inflexibility and opinions that have been, outrightly stated on where they intend to go with this. The second would be that Grand County could certainly withdraw from the health district. If they are unhappy, and they've stated that multiple times, then perhaps it is time. And the other is also, Commissioner Hopes has mentioned, is that the resolution, if we pass that today, allows us to, in a timely manner, withdraw as Carbon County and probably take others with us if that is the case. So, Commissioners, and I don't know how Christian would have us, but before us we have resolution number 2017-08, which is the resolution of Carbon County Board of Commissioners giving notice of its intent to withdraw from the Southeast Utah District Health Department. And I don't know if we need to read that in at this point, Christian. We certainly can.
I think we ought to.
Okay.
And I just point out a note that, of course, the resolution does not sever Carbon County from the Health Department until December 31st, 2017. You know that, but for the public's information, you can only withdraw on December 31st of any given year, and you have to have given 90 days notice. Probably contemplated within that 90 days notice is the opportunity to resolve issues and differences, and of course, so therefore this resolution could be withdrawn or nullified if agreements are worked out within that interim time period. If not, however, this is sufficient to withdraw Carbon County from the Health Department effective December 31st.
Would you like to read that in? Or would
I'd
you
be
like
happy
me
to. I'll just read it straight. It's quite short. Whereas the Board of County, this is resolution number 2017-08. It's a resolution of the Carbon County Board of Commissioners giving notice of its intent to withdraw from the Southeastern Utah District Health Department. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners is charged with establishing a local health department for the benefit of Carbon County residents, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners is concerned about the present ability of the Southeastern Utah Board of Health to meet the needs of Carbon County's residents, now therefore the Carbon County Board of Commissioners finds that the citizens of Carbon County will be better served by withdrawing from the Southeastern Utah District Health Department and forming its own health district. Now therefore be it hereby resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Carbon County, Utah, that pursuant to Utah Code Annotated Section 26A-1-122, the Board of Commissioners does hereby give notice that Carbon County shall withdraw from the Southeastern Utah District Health Department effective December 31st, 2017. The Board of Commissioners reserves the right to rescind this resolution at any time prior to that date. Signed this date by the Board of County Commissioners of Carbon County, Utah.
Commissioner Potter, if I might add
Yes,
one more.
please.
The dysfunction of the board has affected the health department employees overall, and I would say more so to those health department employees located within our county, as the majority of them are here due to the headquarters being located here. And I would urge that as we pass this resolution today, that we encourage Grand and Emery County during the next 90 days or before December 31st, that we meet frequently so that we can possibly come to a different resolution and possibly continue to function as a tri-county health department and overcome some of the issues that we've had. And I think that it is prudent to have the 90-day deadline or the December 31st deadline, because that puts a little bit of urgency on the health department to meet more than just once every 2 months, more than just once every month, that we have some serious issues that we need to iron out if we're all going to come together and make it work. And so I would go ahead, well, I'm ready to make a motion unless there's more discussion.
We'll take your motion, Commissioner.
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the resolution to withdraw from the Southeastern Utah District Health Department, Resolution 2017-08, on that stance of we need to fix the problems and we need to fix them sooner than later, or we need to find something that works better for Carbon or for Castle Country as a whole.
We have a motion.
I'll second that in hopes that we can figure out a clear pathway forward before December 31st.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sounds like that
And
was unanimous.
Just as another comment, obviously employees of the health department will be concerned of our motion. Ideally, nothing will change with your employment, and that you'll continue to perform the same functions that you currently perform. And so I would urge you not to be worried about your jobs and different things, but perhaps to encourage your representatives in the counties that you represent to come together and to make an agreement, to come together and iron out our differences so that we can function appropriately as a board or in some new type of organization so that we can move forward. And that would be what I would ask all the employees of the health department to do.
Thank you. Our next item, Commissioners, is consideration and possible awarding of a contract for preparation of brownfields assessment, cleanup, grant application. And we'll turn a few minutes to Tammy.
Thank you, Commissioners. Last commission meeting, we opened the proposal from Stantec. There was only one that was received. And so I just wanted to take a minute to explain. We have met as a committee and feel like this is a good possible way to move forward. But for the grant, if we receive a grant, it comes in 3 different phases, and this would be applying for the first 2 phases. But for a brownfield, it's 3 different phases. The first one is just to identify that we have brownfields within the county. The second phase would be to identify what the cleanup would be and what would be required to clean up the property. And the third one would be actually cleanup. The first 2 phases are 100% of the grant would be paid for, so it wouldn't be asking for any money from the county. The third phase would be a 20-80%. That is not part of this proposal. And I did make some phone calls and did some research, number one, on Stantec, and I received glowing remarks from everyone that I did references on. And also I made some contacts to the state as well as other people that have had brownfields and used them, the brownfields grants, to see if we started phase 1, would we be committed that we had to do phase 2 or phase 3, and they are standalone phases. So we don't have to, if we get through phase 1 and we feel like we're finished, then we're finished. We don't have to go on to phase 2 or to phase 3. And so with that, I felt like we're pretty comfortable. I'm pretty comfortable in feeling like we can move forward with this. The other thing is, in Stantec writing the grant and the application for us does not mean that we pay for them and pay anything for them unless we receive the grant. So it's 100% free, or what's the word? It's not going to be any liability on the county at this point unless we get the grant. And at that point, if we get the grant, we can sit down and create a contract specific for how we're going to move forward with that. So it's my recommendation to the commissioners that we accept the proposal.
You know, Tammy, as we met with the committee, there were a number of things that, even if it's approved, it appears that the administration of the grant and the work to be done would be paid out of the grant.
Yes.
Without, you know, any kind of a match, at least in phase 1 and phase 2 from Carbon County. I do like the one statement in here in regards to our brownfield areas, and And what it really could mean going through this process is that a lot of times you may have a site or a developer that would like to utilize that parcel, but because of some type of contamination or whatever the case might be, they're not able to either get the traditional funding or other funding in order to expand their businesses without some type of an assurance that it is clean, because any lending institution does not want to inherit somebody else's problem. But anyway, in their phase 2, after things have been identified and then also work on what could be done, it says removing uncertainty will often allow the private market to take over without further public involvement or assistance. And I said that in the committee meeting, but I also believe that that is a real case for, going forward with this, that there may be sites that we could utilize if they had the assurance that there was no major issues there. So, Commissioners, any other comments on that?
Commissioners? I do recall one of the comments being made at the committee meeting was that the final contract terms should indicate that there will be no commitment of Carbon County funds on either phases 1 or phase 2. All of the work done, all of the assessments done are to come just out of the grant itself. I think that almost goes without saying, but I do think we ought to make sure that provision is in the contract. The other thing that was mentioned and suggested by one of you, I can't recall who exactly, suggested that there be no obligation that the county be required to hire Stantec for phase 3 work or beyond, or that the county be required to commit its own funds for phase 3 work, at least not at this point. So that should be part of the contract as well. And so we'll make sure that's in there.
Should be part of that.
That doesn't need to be part of the motion. That'll be part of the contract with Stantec afterward, though.
Well, I think you ought to make it maybe part of the motion, that those terms should be included in the contract.
That those are our intentions entering into the contract.
Right, and those provisions should be in there.
So moved. Sorry.
You don't want to try and reword all that.
It was a lot.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion of sorts and a second of sorts, right?
Yeah.
The second being that there is no obligation for phase 3 to use Stantec and or any financial contributions at this point
that we
for
approve
phase 3,
yeah.
and that there will be no overages paid by the county for phases 1 and 2.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Okay.
Yes.
I was also thinking the motion we need to include, so maybe we're going to have to go back and try this again, that we accept the proposal from Stantec.
Let me give it a best efforts attempt.
Would you please?
I move to approve the contract as provided, with the inclusion of limiting our participation to stage 1 or phase 1 and phase 2 that are fully funded and paid for through the grant, and nothing more on part of the county as far as obligation moving forward beyond stage 2 or beyond any financial obligation, and allowing us to then go out to bid for phase 3, where
including engineering.
Including the engineering.
Does that sound about right, Christian?
Yes, it does.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's go ahead and move forward. Our next item, Commissioners, is to convene as the Carbon County Development Agency, and it's my recommendation as chair that we table this item, and the reason being is that the BLM has contacted us and have staked claim on the buildings that we had discussed in our last meeting at the Wildcat loadout, and so we are now going to need to enter into negotiations with the BLM and to establish really ownership and also the availability of the buildings located at that site.
And if I can throw out the comment, not to be offensive in any way, but the BLM told us one thing and now they've told us another. So I'll go ahead and make the motion to table this item until we can get that all ironed out with the BLM.
Items 10, 10.1, and 11?
Yes, please.
Is that your motion?
Yes,
that in that?
yes.
I'll second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Our next item then is review and possible approval of Board of Equalization recommendations from the county hearing officer in regards to values. Seth, you want to take that one?
Yes, Commissioners.
Unless, I didn't see Julie here, so.
She had some other places to go. She brought up some additional information a few minutes ago. We had the Board of Equalization met this year. Statutorily, we have to hold those applications open until September 15th. That deadline is passed, so all appeals have been made to the county. There are still 3 pending issues that need to be resolved. A couple of them dealt with low-income housing projects, the one across from Smith's, one's in Helper. Some of their paperwork came in late. We had to resolve that, which caused some delays. The other large taxpayer that's appealed their property taxes, that's still not resolved because the appraisers have to continue to reconcile all the information, is Sunnyside Cogen out in East Carbon. They provided the rest of the information that was pending yesterday. So hopefully we get a resolution on those soon. There were 158 appeals. The beginning value of all of those properties prior to the appeals process was $44,644,802 worth of taxable value, or market value, better said. The change after the appeals process was $15,687,230 worth of change in value, leaving the value still in the books of the county at $28,957,572. Again, the biggest players in that change were low-income housing projects, because they were assessed at a much higher value because no information was provided. The way that those are valued, it's a substantial decrease, and that's the bulk of the change in value came from that low-income housing project. So.
Do you want to add any comment as far as what that means as a taxing authority, and also what happens here going forward for public record?
Yes. So after the recommendations from the hearing officer are approved by the commission, my office will send out letters, written letters, to all of the property owners who have appealed their property taxes. That letter starts the clock ticking on their statute of limitations of how long they have to appeal to the state. If they disagree with the findings from the hearing officer that we held here in the county, they have 30 days from the time we send that letter to appeal to the state. It's a state appeal. They still send that to the county clerk's office. We have to receive them. We're the clearinghouse for them, and we have to submit them electronically to the state. At that time, they'll be appointed an informal hearing. It'll go before the tax commission. They will make a decision on whether or not we were right in the decision that we made here or not. And the real reason why it needs to be approved, it starts the clock ticking on that because we want to be able to close the tax rolls completely out before the end of the year and be able to turn things over to the treasurer so that she can collect those taxes in November like she's supposed to. So
thanks for going on with the explanation, because so many times we do something like this time of year, but what really is that process that follows with this. So yeah. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for Seth or others?
No questions for me.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations from the Board of Equalization.
Have a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Sorry.
Thank you.
Jumped the gun.
Motion passes. Our next item is presentation of the 2016 financial audit for the county with Doug Rasmussen of Smew, Rich, and Marsing. Doug, we'll turn time to you.
Commissioners, I'm happy to be here. I don't think there's very many other people in this room that are happy to go over numbers, but at least, well, maybe Seth.
He's got a big smile already.
I'm just happy when we finish and can move on.
But I
Because it's time to
appreciate the
start over.
opportunity to be here and to present the financial information to the commissioners in this meeting. If there are questions that you have as we're going through this, feel free to stop me at any time, and hopefully we can interject information as you request. I assume that you have the audit report, so we will go over some of the financial information that is in the audit report. The most important part of this presentation is found on page 2, which I will read. It's the opinion
This is
that
my
we
favorite
have.
part.
Out of 100 and I don't know how many page report, we get it in a paragraph. And it states, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the aggregate discretely presented component units, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the Carbon County as of December 31st, 2016, and the respective changes in financial position, and where applicable, cash flows thereof for the year then ended, in accordance with the county principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That's called an unqualified opinion or a clean opinion, and that is what is needed through the work that is performed in the audit process. We make sure that we perform sufficient amount of work during that audit process to arrive at that unqualified opinion. So that is the most important part of this audit report, but there are other figures in here or figures that we need to go over. And on page 4 of the audit report, we talk about a few of the financial highlights this past year. And if on page 4, if you can see where some of these numbers come from, if you look at page 13 and page 14 for right now, the assets of the county exceeded the liabilities this past year of almost $153 million. That figure comes from page 13, the second column from the right, the bottom figure. And basically what that is the assets that are in control of the county exceeded the liabilities that was due. So if everything was sold in the county, you would exceed the liabilities by about $153 million. That is a decrease from the previous year of about $3.4 million. That figure is on page 14. The next bullet point that is on there is a governmental activities total net position, and we're talking about just the governmental fund. So if on page 14 you look at that figure, that is the bottom part of that page, the fourth figure from the bottom on the left column. You can see that there's $2,463,060 that was a decrease in the current year in the governmental activities. The next bullet point that we have there is at the end of the closing year, Carbon County reported a combined fund balance. Now the combined fund balance is talking about the governmental funds, and that's on page 15. The far right column, the second figure from the bottom on the far right, is your total fund balance for this past year was a little over $20 million. And that was a decrease this past year of about $769,000. That figure comes from page 17 of the audit report. A couple other highlights that we had there for financial information. The county increased their debt obligation by about $13 million. There was $14,625,000 of an increase in funding and debt payments of a little over $1.6 million. So the net effect of that was about $13 million in debt. If you will turn to page 15 and also page 17 of the audit report, These are the fund financial statements. And page 15 shows the balance sheet, which comprises of the assets, the liabilities, and fund balances of each one of the individual governmental fund activity. I'd like to concentrate on 17. Page 17 shows the revenues and the expenses that happened this past year, 2016, in each one of the individual governmental funds. The general fund, which is basically the general operation of the county, had a decrease of a little over $445,000. That was an anticipated decrease, but without a transfer that was made this past year of almost $1 million, that shortfall would have been much larger. So I think when you take a look at your overall operations, and you continue to do this in the decisions that you make, is there has been a decrease. I think that's anticipated, another decrease for this year. So you have to take a look at those financial resources that are coming in and the expenses. And even though you do have a positive and healthy retain or fund balance in the general fund, it doesn't take very many years of deficits to wipe those positive balances away. And so I realize in performing the audits and looking at the financial decisions that have to be made by the commissioners, I in this meeting need to applaud you for making tough decisions. They have to be made, and when you try to get revenue streams that will come in order to absorb those deficits, those hard decisions have to be made. And I look at that, and with the audit information that we were reviewing and looking, realized that those decisions needed to be made and will continue to need to be made in the coming months and years. There is one financial statement in here that is required to be reviewed and looked at, and that is on page 69 of the audit report. It's the schedule of revenues and expenditures compared to budget. And the budgeting process is a big part of what the commissioners do in the process for financial presentation. And I would just like to go over a couple of those pages. The revenue side, with the State Auditor's Office, they don't pay much attention to that. They look at the expenditures or what the appropriation is and has been approved by the commissioners in public meetings. So on page 17, we start with the expenditures. And as you can see on those pages, compared in the general government, in the individual departments, the public safety, the sheriff's department was over budget slightly by $25,000, a little over $25,000. The jail complex was over slightly, $75,000. But overall, the public safety operations, there was enough budget in there to absorb those overages. On page 72, there was only one unfavorable budget variance, and that was in the miscellaneous area by a little over $13,000. So overall, your budgeting process was very positive, $616,000 as exceeding your budget. Your expenditures were less than what your approved budget was by a little over $616,000. There are a couple of management points that are in the audit report. It's not bound with the audit report. It's in the back on a 2-page letter. Management points that we have addressed with Seth, and he has provided responses of how these will be corrected and taken care of in the future. One of those is timely reconciliation of cash accounts. And basically that is making sure that those bank accounts are reconciled on a monthly basis and that they're done timely, and making sure that the activity transactions have been recorded in the financial statements. And I will read the comment that Seth put on here. He said the county will provide additional temporary staffing and training for the treasurer's and clerk auditor's office in order to facilitate more timely reconciliations. And so we will be reviewing that and looking at that in the next year's audit. There's also another item, 2016-2, which talks about timely recording of accounts and taxes receivable. Same scenario, making sure that those balances are recorded accurately, not only during the year, but especially during the end of the year, so that they are reflected properly in the financial statements. Seth's comment response for this is the county has made changes in personnel and responsibilities that should facilitate the correct recording of accounts receivable and taxes receivable for the 2017 calendar year. Again, we will look at that, and I know that that can happen and will happen as far as the audit is concerned. Overall, the audit report, there was additional work that was done because of some of these items, but Seth has been very good. He's been very good, helpful to work with, and we appreciate all of the personnel that you have here to be able to work with them. The audit process takes a long time, and I know Seth is very glad when we're out of his hair, and we get to know him maybe at times too much because we're over here so much, but we're glad to be able to be here and glad for his work, and his office is very helpful in that process.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that report. Very, very timely as we start the next budget opportunity.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Doug, commissioners?
None.
Any?
Okay.
I guess I better not leave before there might be.
They said we're done with you, so.
Okay.
I can't wait till we have our official review, or our other review.
Thank you, Doug. We take a motion to adjourn. That's our last item.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.